Welcome back. This channel exists because of your support. Subscribe, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now let's get into the story. I was reading work emails on my laptop when Melissa walked into the living room with that look on her face. You know the one. The expression that says whatever comes next isn't up for discussion. It was Tuesday evening, just after 8. We'd finished dinner in silence like we had most nights for the past month. She'd spent the entire meal on her phone, smiling at the screen, typing away while her food got cold. She stood there with her arms crossed, backlit by the hallway light, and when she spoke, her voice had that same tone she used when announcing she'd be working late. Casual, matter of fact, like she was telling me she'd picked up milk at the store. I'm going on a trip next week, leaving Sunday morning, coming back the following Sunday. I looked up from the screen, setting the laptop aside. What trip? Beach resort in Cancun. Some people from work are going. Some people. The phrase hung in the air between us. I knew exactly who she meant. For the past 6 months, one name had been coming up more than any other in her conversations. One name that made her eyes light up in a way they hadn't for me in longer than I cared to remember. Scott's going? I asked, keeping my voice level. She didn't even hesitate. Didn't look away. Didn't show even a flicker of discomfort. He organized it, actually. Him and Jordan and a couple others from Creative. A week. 7 days. She was announcing, not asking, that she'd be gone for an entire week with the guy I'd watched her get progressively closer to over the past half year. The guy whose texts made her smile at dinner. The guy she'd stayed late at work with more times than I could count. The guy whose name came up in conversation more often than mine did anymore. You're telling me you're going on a week-long trip to Cancun with Scott, I said slowly. And you're just informing me about this now? She rolled her eyes. Actually rolled her eyes at me. It's not like that. We're colleagues. Adults can take trips together without it being some dramatic thing. When did you plan this? 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. She'd known for 3 weeks and decided to tell me now, the week before she'd leave. I sat up straighter. And you didn't think to mention it before now? Or ask if I was comfortable with this? That's when her expression changed. The fake patience disappeared, replaced by something colder. Ask? I'm not asking for permission, Andrew. I'm going. If you have a problem with my decisions, then file for divorce. The words hung in the air between us. She said it so casually, like she was daring me to react, like she expected me to back down and apologize for even questioning her. I looked at her, really looked at her, and something clicked. This wasn't the woman I married. Or maybe it was, and I'd just been too blind to see it. The disrespect, the coldness, the complete lack of consideration. It had been building for months. I didn't yell. Didn't argue. I just nodded slowly. All right. She blinked, clearly expecting more of a fight. That's it. No big scene. Nope. You made yourself clear. She stared at me for another moment, then shrugged and walked toward the bedroom. Good. I'm packing tonight. Flight's early. I watched her go. Heard her pulling suitcases out of the closet, humming to herself like she didn't have a care in the world. Like she hadn't just thrown our marriage on the table and walked away from it. I picked up my phone, but I wasn't thinking about work anymore. I was thinking, planning. She wanted to make unilateral decisions about our marriage? Fine. Two could play that game. While I sat there in the quiet living room, listening to her hum in the bedroom like she was packing for the best vacation of her life, my mind drifted back to when things started changing. It was 6 months ago, almost to the day. I could pinpoint it exactly. March. Melissa came home from work on a Tuesday and mentioned a new hire in her department. We were in the kitchen. I was making dinner. She was pouring herself a glass of wine. Scott Hendricks joined the team today, she said, taking a sip. Finally, someone with actual vision. The ideas he was throwing out in the meeting were incredible. I didn't think much of it at the time. People talk about their coworkers, get excited about new team members who bring fresh energy. But then his name kept coming up. Every few days, another Scott story. Scott suggested a new approach for the spring campaign. Scott took everyone to this amazing lunch spot on McKinney Avenue. Scott made a joke during the quarterly review that had everyone dying laughing. Scott thinks we should pivot the messaging strategy. By April, I started noticing other changes. Subtle things at first. She was putting more effort into her appearance for work. Better outfits, not just professional, but stylish. More makeup than she usually wore. Hair done with more care than usual, styled instead of just pulled back. You look nice, I said one morning as she checked herself in the hallway mirror for the third time. She barely glanced at me. Just trying to maintain professional standards. Professional standards. The phrase struck me as odd even then. She'd worked at the same company for 5 years. Why did professional standards suddenly require designer blouses and 45 minutes in front of the mirror? The late nights started in May. She'd text me around 5 o'clock saying she had to stay late. Just a couple hours, she said. Then it became regular. Twice a week, then 3 times. The texts would come at 5. Then she wouldn't walk through the door until 8. Sometimes 8:30. Sometimes later. Big project. I asked one night when she finally walked in at 8:30, dropping her purse on the counter with a sigh that sounded more exhilarated than exhausted. Yeah, Scott and I are working on the quarterly reports together. You know how it is. Takes forever to get everything just right. I nodded, but what struck me was the phrasing. Scott and I. Not the team. Now we had a deadline. Not even I had to stay late. It was always Scott and I, like they were a unit. A partnership. I tried talking to her about it once. We were in the kitchen on a Saturday morning in late May. She was making coffee, getting ready to head out for another brunch with friends that would mysteriously last 6 hours. Is everything okay with us? I asked. She looked at me like I'd just asked if the earth was flat. Complete incomprehension mixed with annoyance. Why would you ask that? You seem distant lately. We barely talk anymore. You're always busy, always heading out, always working late. I'm not distant. I'm busy. There's a difference, Andrew. She said my name like it was an accusation. I have a career. I have friends. I have a life outside this house. But it wasn't just busy. I understood busy. I worked 60-hour weeks myself. But busy people still make time for their spouse. Still have conversations that go deeper than logistics about bills and groceries and whose turn it is to take out the trash. Still look at you like they're happy to see you when you walk in the room. She stopped looking at me like that months ago. Now when I walked into a room, her eyes would flick up from her phone for half a second, register my presence, then go right back to the screen. Like I was furniture. Background noise. In June, I noticed the texts. She'd be sitting next to me on the couch, phone buzzing constantly. She'd smile at the screen, type back quickly, smile again. When I asked who she was texting, she'd say just work stuff, and turn the screen away. One night her phone was on the counter while she was in the shower. It lit up with a message. I didn't pick it up, didn't read it, but I saw the name. Scott Hendricks. At 10:47 at night. Work stuff. By July, we'd stopped having any physical connection. She'd come to bed late, after I was already asleep. Wake up early and be gone before I got up. On weekends, she'd find reasons to be busy. Errands, meeting up with friends. Suddenly, she had a very active social life that didn't include me. The few times I suggested we do something together, she'd sigh like I was being difficult. I've been busy all week. I just want to relax. But relaxing apparently meant being on her phone, texting someone who made her smile more than I had in months. A few weeks earlier, I asked her directly. We were in the kitchen. She was making coffee before heading out for another brunch that would somehow last 6 hours. Are you happy? I said. In this marriage? She stirred her coffee, not meeting my eyes. I don't know why you're being so dramatic lately. I'm not being dramatic. I'm asking a simple question. Things are fine. You're overthinking. But she never answered the question. 2 weeks ago, she stayed out until midnight. Said it was a work dinner that ran late. She came home smelling like wine and unfamiliar cologne. Expensive cologne. Not hers. I didn't say anything. Just watched her stumble to the bedroom, humming to herself. And now, this Tuesday in late August, the announcement about the trip. The casual way she threw it in my face. The complete lack of respect or consideration. And when I questioned it, when I dared to suggest it was inappropriate, she told me to file for divorce. Like she wanted me to. Like she was daring me to finally do something about the situation we both knew existed, but neither of us had named out loud. So I would. The next morning, I woke up early and called a divorce attorney. It was barely 7 in the morning, but I found one who answered. Kenneth Levy. His reviews were solid, and when I explained the situation during our phone consultation, he didn't waste time with false sympathy. How soon can you see me? I asked. 10 o'clock if it's urgent. I took a personal day from work. Levy's office was downtown, professional and efficient. He was in his late 50s, direct, the kind of lawyer who dealt in facts, not feelings. How long have you been married? He asked. 8 years. Children? No. Assets? Property? House in Lakewood. My name only. Bought it a year before we got married. She moved in after the wedding, but never contributed to the mortgage or major repairs. He typed notes into his computer. Good. That simplifies things significantly. Vehicles? 2 cars, separate loans, both in our individual names. Bank accounts. Joint checking for household bills. I have a separate savings account she's not on. She has her own account too. Retirement accounts, investments? Mine are from before the marriage, kept separate. She has her own 401k through work. He leaned back in his chair. This is straightforward. What are the grounds? Infidelity. She's currently on a week-long trip to Cancun with the man she's been having an affair with. Can you prove the affair? 6 months of changed behavior. Constant late nights with him. Secret texting. She told me to file for divorce if I didn't like her going on this trip, then left anyway. Levy paused his typing. She said that verbatim? File for divorce. Word for word. Do you have that in writing? Text message? Email? No, it was verbal. But I'm certain if asked under oath, she'd admit it. He considered this. When does she return? Next Sunday afternoon. We can have papers drafted and filed by Friday. You want to serve them yourself? Yes, I want to be there. He nodded like he'd heard that before. The house is yours. Once served, you have every right to ask her to leave. If she refuses, you can involve law enforcement. Understood. One more thing, Mr. Nicholson. She will likely be angry and irrational. Don't engage beyond what's necessary. Don't let her bait you into saying something that could be used later. I won't. Retainer is $3,500. We'll move fast. I wrote the check from my personal account. Sunday morning, I woke to find Melissa already dressed. She was wearing new resort wear I'd never seen before, obviously bought specifically for this trip. Her hair and makeup were done carefully. A large pink suitcase sat by the front door. She was checking her phone, smiling at the screen. I'll text when I land, she said, not looking at me. Have a good trip, I said, keeping my voice neutral. She glanced up at that, suspicious of my calm tone. She searched my face for anger, for hurt, for something. Found nothing. Shrugged, grabbed her suitcase, and left. I watched from the window. She loaded the suitcase into her car, checked her appearance in the side mirror, adjusted her hair, smiled at her reflection. Then she drove away without looking back at the house once. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner. Then I opened my laptop and checked my email. There was a message from Levy. Subject line, Nicholson divorce petition, filing confirmed. The rest of that Sunday, I went through the house systematically. I identified everything that was hers. Clothes, toiletries, books, decorations she'd brought into the marriage. I made a list, then drove to Home Depot on Forest Lane and bought boxes and labels. I began packing methodically. I even took photos of each box's contents, smart documentation in case I needed it later. Monday, I worked from home and continued packing. The guest bedroom filled with labeled boxes. Bathroom items, bedroom clothing, kitchen items she bought. Everything that came with her, or that she'd purchased during our marriage, went into boxes. By Tuesday, the house was starting to look different. Cleaner somehow. I realized how much of her style I'd never actually liked. Throw pillows with inspirational quotes. Trendy decorations that didn't fit the house. All of it going into boxes. Tuesday afternoon, I received a call from Levy. Papers filed this morning. Judge signed off. She'll be officially served when you present them. Perfect. I finished packing the last of her items. 6 boxes total, neatly stacked in the guest bedroom. I labeled them, photographed them for documentation, then researched locksmiths. I scheduled one for Sunday afternoon, the day she'd return. Wednesday, my friend Brian called. We'd known each other since college at the University of Houston. You doing okay, man? He asked. You've been quiet. I'm handling something. I'll fill you in soon. This about Melissa? Yeah. She's still doing that thing where she's always working late. Among other things. There was a pause. You need anything, just call. I know. Thanks. I kept the details private. No point having conversations about it when nothing was final yet. Thursday, I received the first text from Melissa all week. Just a photo of a beach sunset with the caption, beautiful here. No miss you. No wish you were here. Just an assertion of how great it was where I wasn't. I didn't respond. An hour later, another text. Weather is perfect. I still didn't respond. The phone showed red receipts, so she knew I was seeing her messages. She didn't ask why I wasn't responding. That told me everything I needed to know. Friday, I picked up the official copies of the filed divorce papers from Levy's office. Everything's in order, he said, sliding them across his desk. These are served copies. One for her, one for your records. I placed them in a manila envelope and drove home. I set the envelope on the kitchen table where it would be impossible to miss when walking in the front door. The house was immaculate. Her belongings boxed. Papers ready. I worked a normal day, answered emails, stayed calm. Mentally, I rehearsed Sunday's confrontation. I felt no anxiety, only clarity. Saturday, Melissa sent another text. Can't wait to be home tomorrow. Miss you. The first miss you of the entire trip. A heart emoji after a week of near silence. I stared at the message for a full minute. I considered responding. Decided against it. Left it on read. That evening, I met Brian for drinks at a bar in Deep Ellum. You seem different, he said. Calmer than you've been in months. I am. You going to tell me why? Soon. You'll see. We talked about normal things. Sports, work, plans. I realized I was more relaxed than I'd been in half a year. It confirmed my decision. Sunday morning came. I received a text at 2:30, landing in 30 minutes. She didn't ask for a pickup. Telling. I positioned myself in the kitchen with my laptop open, trying to look casual. The divorce papers sat in the envelope on the table, impossible to miss. The guest room door was open, boxes visible. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. At 3:20, I heard a car in the driveway. The engine shut off. A car door opened and closed. I heard the jingle of keys. The keys slid into the lock. The door swung open. Melissa stepped inside, and I had to admit, she looked incredible. Dramatically tanned. Her light brown hair sun-bleached to honey blonde, glowing with that specific kind of health and happiness that comes from a week of doing exactly what you want with exactly who you want. She was wearing a new sundress I'd never seen, white with blue flowers, paired with leather sandals that were also new. Everything about her screamed vacation romance. She dropped her pink suitcase by the door with a thud and headed directly to the kitchen, her sandals slapping against the hardwood floor. She barely acknowledged me standing there, leaning against the counter with my laptop open in front of me. She opened the refrigerator, the light washing over her face as she scanned the shelves. I'm starving. Airplane food was terrible. They gave us these sad little sandwich boxes that tasted like cardboard. She rooted around, pulled out a container of leftover pasta, grabbed a fork from the drawer, and started eating directly from the container. She didn't bother heating it up, just stood there against the opposite counter, eating cold pasta like she owned the place. Completely comfortable, completely at ease. Like the past week had been perfectly normal. Like she hadn't just spent 7 days on a beach with another man while her husband sat at home. She finally looked at me, really looked at me, and frowned slightly. You're quiet. I kept my voice neutral, almost pleasant. Welcome home. She caught the sarcastic edge underneath, and her frown deepened. What's that supposed to mean? How was Cancun? Her face brightened immediately. She actually smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. The resort was gorgeous, right on the beach. Weather couldn't have been better, not a single rainy day. The food was amazing. We had such an amazing time. We. Not I. We. She didn't even catch her own slip. Glad you enjoyed yourself? I said. She took another bite of pasta, leaning back against the counter, her body language completely relaxed. She looked so confident, so certain that everything was exactly as she'd left it. So, she said between bites, twirling the fork, did you think about what I said before I left? I tilted my head slightly. About the divorce? She said it so casually, setting the fork down on the counter, crossing her arms. Like we were discussing weekend plans or where to get takeout. Yeah, I meant it, you know. I've been thinking about it a lot, actually. If you can't handle me having my own life, having friends, taking trips without needing your permission for everything, then maybe we really do need to reconsider this whole thing. Because I'm not going to live my life walking on eggshells, worried about whether you approve of every decision I make. I nodded slowly, processing the words. The entitlement dripping from every syllable. The complete reframing of the situation to make me the villain. You're right. She blinked, stopped mid-reach for the pasta container. What? You're right. We should reconsider everything. She laughed, but it sounded uncertain. Nervous. like she'd just realized the ground beneath her wasn't as solid as she thought. Okay, so what does that mean exactly? I gestured to the kitchen table behind her, where the manila envelope sat in plain view. See for yourself. She turned slowly, confused. Her eyes scanned the kitchen, landed on the manila envelope sitting in the center of the table. Her expression shifted from confusion to concern to something that looked almost like fear. She set down the pasta container carefully, like she was moving in slow motion. Walked to the table. Her hand hesitated over the envelope before picking it up. She held it for a moment, just staring at it, before opening the flap. She pulled out the papers. I watched her face as she read. It was like watching a time-lapse of someone aging. The color drained from her cheeks, the tan suddenly looking artificial against her pale skin. Her hands started to shake, the papers rustling in her grip. Her eyes moved across the first page. Then she flipped to the second, the third. Her breathing got faster. What is this? Her voice came out as barely a whisper, rough and strained. Divorce papers. Like you suggested. She looked up at me, and for the first time in 6 months, I had her complete, undivided attention. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated. She looked genuinely shocked. Like despite everything, despite the affair and the disrespect and the complete deterioration of our marriage, she'd never actually thought I'd do it. You're joking. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. A desperate assertion that this couldn't be real. I'm not. Her voice rose, cracking slightly. This is insane. You can't. She couldn't even finish the sentence. Her hands were shaking so badly the papers were rattling. I can. And I did. She read through the papers again, slower this time, like maybe she'd misunderstood the first time. Like maybe they'd say something different if she looked harder. Her hands were still shaking. A tear rolled down her cheek, leaving a track through her makeup. These are filed. She looked at the stamp at the top of the first page, the official seal from the court. You filed these while I was gone. You actually filed them. Wednesday. Her voice went up an octave. Wednesday? I'd only been gone 3 days. 3 days and you. She stopped, shaking her head like she could shake away reality. You told me to file for divorce if I didn't like your choices. I didn't like your choices. Here we are. She slammed the papers down on the table hard enough to make the wood rattle. I didn't think you'd actually do it. People say things when they're angry. You know that. You say things in the heat of the moment that you don't mean. You weren't angry. You were completely calm. Matter of fact, even. You meant every word. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. This is crazy. You're throwing away 8 years over one trip. I'm not throwing away anything. You did that when you went to Cancun with your boyfriend. Scott is not my boyfriend. He's a colleague. Nothing happened. I just looked at her. Didn't argue. Didn't debate. The lie was so obvious it didn't deserve a response. She must have seen something in my expression because her tone shifted, got defensive. This is exactly why I needed space. You're paranoid. You've been suffocating me for months. Suffocating you by asking where you were at 10 at night? By suggesting we spend weekends together? Yeah, I'm terrible. She ran her hands through her hair. Look, we can talk about this. Work through it. Counseling, whatever. But divorce? That's extreme. What's extreme is telling your husband to file for divorce, then acting shocked when he does exactly that. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Maybe she was. Maybe she'd gotten so used to me accepting whatever she did that the idea of consequences never crossed her mind. Where are my things? She asked suddenly, looking around. Where's my stuff from the bathroom? Guest bedroom. Everything's packed. She hurried down the hall. I heard the door open, heard her sharp gasp. She came back, anger replacing the shock. You packed my things? You had no right. They're your belongings. You'll need them when you leave. When I leave? This is my house too. Actually, it's not. Her face flushed red. We're married. We live here together. The house is in my name. Purchased before we married. You never contributed to the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, or major repairs. Check with your attorney if you want. Mine already confirmed it. She was breathing hard now. So what? You're kicking me out? Just like that? You have until tomorrow morning to figure out where you're going. After that, the locks get changed. You can't do that. I can and I will. She grabbed her phone from her pocket, hands fumbling with it. I'm calling my mother. Go ahead. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Sharp, insistent. 3 quick jabs at the button. Melissa practically ran to answer it. I heard her voice break as she opened the door. Mom. She fell into her mother's arms before she could finish the sentence. Patricia swept into the house like a storm front, one arm around her daughter's shoulders, her eyes already scanning the room for me. When she found me standing calmly in the kitchen doorway, her expression could have frozen fire. Patricia was in her late 50s, always well-dressed, always perfectly put together. She'd made it clear over the years that she thought Melissa had married beneath her station. I was a software engineer, stable and reliable, but Patricia had wanted a doctor or a lawyer for her daughter. Someone with more prestige, more money, better breeding, as she'd once said after too much wine at Thanksgiving. What have you done? She demanded, her voice sharp and accusatory. Not what happened. Not what's going on. What have you done? Like this was automatically my fault. I stayed where I was, keeping my voice level and calm. Filed for divorce. While she was on vacation with another man. She went on a work trip with colleagues. Patricia's voice rose, echoing in the high-ceilinged living room. She went to a resort in Cancun with a man she's been having an affair with for 6 months. When I objected to this trip, she told me to file for divorce if I didn't like it. So I did exactly that. Melissa was crying harder now, mascara running down her face in dark streams, her shoulders shaking. He's kicking me out, Mom. He packed all my things. He changed the locks. He won't even listen to me. Patricia's face went from pale to red in an instant. Her hand tightened on Melissa's shoulder. This is her home. You can't just throw her out like she's nothing. Like 8 years of marriage means nothing. I met her eyes steadily. The house is in my name. I bought it a year before we got married. She moved in after the wedding, but her name was never added to the deed. She never contributed to the mortgage, never paid property taxes or insurance, never paid for any of the major repairs. Legally, I can ask her to leave whenever I want. That's ridiculous. Patricia's voice was shaking with rage now. You're married. What's yours is hers. That's how marriage works. Not in Texas. Not when the property was purchased before the marriage and kept in one name. Check with any attorney if you want. Mine already confirmed it. Patricia looked like she wanted to argue more, but she must have seen something in my expression that told her it would be pointless. Instead, she turned to Melissa, her voice softening. Get your things, sweetheart. You're staying with me until we figure this out. I'm not leaving, Melissa said, her voice shaking but defiant. She pulled away from her mother, standing up straighter. This is my house. I live here. He can't just kick me out. It's not your house, I said quietly. And if you're not gone by tomorrow morning, I'll have the police remove you for trespassing. Melissa stared at me like I'd slapped her. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. You wouldn't actually call the police on me. I held her gaze, not blinking. Try me. Patricia grabbed Melissa's arm. Come on. Let him sit here alone with his papers. See how that works out. They went to the guest room. I heard them moving boxes, talking in low, angry voices. 20 minutes later, they were loading Melissa's car. Multiple trips back and forth. I watched from the window. Didn't help. Didn't speak. Melissa came back in one final time. Her eyes were red, mascara streaked down her cheeks. I hope you know you're making the biggest mistake of your life, she said. I don't think so. You're going to regret this. Probably not. She stared at me, looking for some crack in my composure. Found none. Then she turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. I watched through the window as they loaded the final boxes. Patricia put her arm around Melissa's shoulders. Both of them crying now. They drove away. I picked up my phone and called the locksmith. How soon can you get here? Hour and a half, sir. Perfect. The locksmith finished around 7 that evening. New locks, new keys. I tested them twice. All set, he said, packing up his tools. Those old keys won't work anymore. After he left, I ordered dinner and sat down with a beer. The house felt different. Lighter somehow. Like a weight I'd been carrying for months had finally been lifted. My phone started buzzing around 8. Melissa. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again 2 minutes later. Again. On the 5th call, I answered. What? Her voice was calmer now, controlled. She'd probably spent the last few hours strategizing with her mother. We need to talk. No, we don't. Please, just hear me out. I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. There hasn't. Can I come over? Just to talk face to face? No. Why are you being so stubborn about this? I almost laughed. Stubborn? That's what you're going with. I made a mistake, okay? I shouldn't have said what I said. I was upset and spoke without thinking. You weren't upset. You were cold and calculated. You meant every word. That's not true. I love you. I don't want this marriage to end. Funny how you suddenly love me now that there are consequences. She was quiet for a moment. What do you want from me? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about the trip, about what I said. Can we please talk about this like adults? We are talking. I'm telling you the divorce is happening. You're upset about it. Nothing else to discuss. You're really going to throw away 8 years over one fight. It wasn't one fight. It was 6 months of you prioritizing another man over your husband. The fight was just the breaking point. Nothing happened with Scott. I don't care anymore. Silence. That hit her. You don't care? No. Whatever did or didn't happen doesn't matter. You checked out of this marriage months ago. I'm just finalizing what you already decided. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. You'll get over it. I hung up. She called back immediately. I declined it. She called again. I turned off my phone. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and 12 text messages. Most were variations of the same thing. Please talk to me. We can fix this. I miss you. Don't do this. One stood out, though. Send at 2 in the morning. You're going to regret pushing me away. I have rights, too. There it was. The anger underneath the pleading. I deleted all the messages and blocked her number. Monday afternoon, I received a call from Kenneth Levy. Your wife's attorney reached out. Sharon Oliver. She's competent. What does she want? Discussion of settlement terms. She's pushing back on the house. Says your wife deserves compensation for 8 years of marriage. Compensation for what? Living rent-free? Essentially my argument. Look, she's going to try to drag this out, make it difficult. But we have a strong position. House predates marriage, no children, separate incomes. Should be straightforward. Good. One thing. She's claiming emotional distress. Says you blindsided her, caused psychological harm by filing while she was on vacation. I actually laughed. She told me to get divorced. I did exactly what she suggested. That's what I figured. Do you have that in writing anywhere? No, it was verbal. We'll work with it. For now, stay the course. Don't engage with her. All communication goes through me. Already blocked her number. Perfect. Friday evening, I was grocery shopping at Tom Thumb on Mockingbird Lane when I saw Jordan Ballard in the produce section. Jordan worked with Melissa, had supposedly been on the trip. Jordan saw me and her face went red. She started pushing her cart away quickly. Jordan, I called out. She stopped reluctantly, turned around. Quick question. Were you on that Cancun trip with Melissa? She shifted uncomfortably. I don't think I should talk about that. So that's a no? She looked down at her cart. I was invited, but I couldn't go. Family commitment. So who actually went? She hesitated. I think it was just Melissa and Scott. No other colleagues. Jordan met my eyes finally. No. I told her it was a bad idea, but she didn't listen. She rarely does. Jordan nodded. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. She's been different lately. Not in a good way. Thanks for the honesty. She started to push her cart past me, then stopped. There's something else. They're not together anymore. Scott and Melissa. I waited. He broke it off a few days ago. Said it wasn't what he expected. I think the divorce scared him. I absorbed this information. So he was just in it for the thrill. Seems like it. Now she is nothing. That's not my problem anymore. Jordan looked sympathetic. No, I guess it's not. 3 weeks later, Levy called with an update. She signed. What? She signed the papers. Her attorney convinced her fighting would just cost money with no benefit. It's done. You're officially divorced pending final court date. I sat down processing that. That was fast. She didn't have leverage. Once her attorney explained she'd get nothing more than offered, she realized fighting was pointless. When's the court date? 4 weeks. But it's a formality. Everything's settled. After I hung up, I sat there for a while. Divorced. After 8 years, it should have felt sad or final or something. Instead, it just felt like closing a chapter one should have closed months ago. I called Brian. You free tonight? Yeah, what's up? Divorce is finalized. Want to grab dinner? Absolutely. The mansion at 7? See you there. The court date came and went 4 weeks later. 10 minutes in front of a judge, signatures on documents, and it was officially over. I walked out of the Harris County Courthouse feeling lighter than I had in years. Brian was waiting by his car. How does it feel? Like I should have done this 6 months ago. We grabbed lunch at a diner on Commerce Street. He asked about my plans, whether I was going to sell the house, move somewhere new. No point, I said. I like the house. It's mine. Why would I leave? Fair enough. 2 months later, I was at Home Depot on Walnut Hill picking up supplies when I saw Melissa across the parking lot. She looked tired, thinner, like she'd lost weight. She saw me and quickly looked away, hurrying to her car. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. Just nothing. That's when I knew I'd truly moved on. The following week, Brian mentioned he'd heard through mutual friends that Melissa had tried getting back with Scott. He'd turned her down flat. Apparently, he had a new girlfriend now. Someone single. Does that bother you? Brian asked. Not even slightly. And I meant it. She'd made her choices. Prioritized excitement over stability. Burned down her marriage for something that was never going to last. Now she was dealing with the aftermath. Not my problem anymore. 6 months after the divorce was final, I went on a date. Coffee at Ascension Coffee in the Design District with a woman named Claire I'd met through a work connection. We talked easily, laughed at the same things, made plans to meet again. As I drove home that night, I realized something. I was happy, genuinely happy. Not pretending, not settling, not making excuses. Just happy. I thought back to that Tuesday evening in August when Melissa announced her trip. When she stood in our living room and told me to file for divorce if I didn't like her decisions. I smiled to myself. Best advice she ever gave me. Dear listeners, that's our ending. If it resonated, subscribe to support the channel. See you next time.